They made me carry the bags to the hotel door and then shut me out. That same night, I slept in the presidential suite. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. You'll be helping me continue to get this off my chest. My name is Alice Rodriguez. I'm 57 years old, and I've lived in Queens, New York for over 30 years. I clean offices starting at 5 in the morning. My hands are raw from detergent, and my knees crack every time I get up off the floor. But that Friday morning, when my old flip phone buzzed while I was mopping the floor of the last office, my heart filled with a hope I hadn't felt in months. It was Jessica, my daughter. "Mom, do you want to come with us to the hotel this weekend? We're celebrating our anniversary, and the kids want to see you." Her words sounded sweet, like when she was little and would ask me to tell her bedtime stories. It had been more than 3 months since I'd seen my grandchildren, Leo and Sophie, 8 and 6 years old. The last time I went to pick them up from school, Jessica had yelled at me over the phone, "Mom, you can't just show up without calling. The kids have scheduled activities." But now she was inviting me to a hotel for her anniversary with Greg. I leaned the mop against the wall and sat down in the swivel chair of the desk I had just cleaned. The smell of disinfectant calmed me. It reminded me that at least I had a job, that I could at least pay the rent on my studio apartment in Jackson Heights. "Really, honey? A hotel?" "Yes, Mom. Out in the Hamptons. It has a pool and the kids are so excited. Greg booked 2 rooms, one for us and one for the kids. And well, we thought you'd like to join us." My chest swelled like a balloon. 2 rooms. That meant there was space for me, that they were finally including me in their family plans. That maybe, after so many years of feeling like a stranger in my own daughter's life, things were changing. That afternoon, after finishing my shift, I rushed to the Target in my neighborhood. I bought Oreo cookies, the kind Leo loved, and some strawberry bubble yum for Sophie. I spent almost $20 on things I knew would make them smile. Money I needed for the electric bill. But it's worth it when it's for the grandkids, right? I spent all of Friday night packing my red suitcase, the same one I had used to travel to Miami with my late husband Antonio 20 years ago. I folded my best blouse, the navy blue one I'd bought on sale at Macy's last year. I packed the family albums, the ones where Jessica is a baby in my arms, where she's learning to walk in Central Park, where she's celebrating her first communion in that white dress that cost me 3 paychecks but was worth every penny. I also packed the toys I kept at my place, the red Matchbox car that Leo adored when he was 4, and the rag doll I had made myself for Sophie, with scraps of fabric and a lot of love. I thought maybe they would remember them, that their eyes would light up when they saw them. On Saturday, I woke up at 6 in the morning, even though I didn't have to work. I showered with my usual glycerin soap, combed my gray hair with the part on the side just like my mother taught me, and put a little blush on my cheeks. I wanted to look nice for my grandchildren. I arrived at the hotel at 5:30 in the afternoon, lugging my red suitcase, a backpack with the albums, and a plastic bag with the toys and cookies. The hotel was elegant, with large windows and a perfectly manicured lawn. There were families coming and going, children running around in swimsuits, couples walking hand in hand. I saw Greg's car, a gray BMW that has always intimidated me a little. Jessica was getting out of the driver's seat, wearing a white sundress that made her look younger than her 32 years. The kids were climbing out of the back doors, Leo in his New York Yankees cap, and Sophie with perfect pigtails. My heart beat faster. They had come for me. I approached, smiling, dragging the suitcase across the pavement. "Jessica, kids!" I yelled, waving with my free hand. Jessica looked at me over her sunglasses. She didn't smile. "Mom, please, just go on up by yourself. I've got the kids and the car is full. We'll see you upstairs." She turned around without hugging me, without asking how I had gotten there, if I'd had trouble with the bus, if I needed help with my bags. Leo glanced at me for a second. I smiled and made a heart shape with my hands, like we used to. He looked down and followed his mother. Sophie didn't even see me. She was busy playing with a phone I hadn't seen her with before. I stood there on the curb, watching my family walk into the hotel without looking back, as if I were a stranger, as if I hadn't raised that woman by myself, without any help, working double shifts so she would never want for anything. The handles of the suitcase were cutting into my palms. The afternoon sun was beating down on my face. But what hurt the most was that familiar feeling in my chest, the one I had known for years, the feeling of being invisible to the people you love most in the world. I took a deep breath and walked towards the hotel entrance, dragging my suitcase across the marble floor that shone under the lobby lights. The air conditioning hit my sweaty face, and for a moment I felt relieved from the July heat. There were elegant families waiting on the leather sofas, well-dressed children running between tropical plants, the soft sound of a piano someone was playing in the bar in the back. I went up to the reception desk. The young man helping me had perfectly styled hair and a professional smile that faded a little when he saw me arrive with my worn-out red suitcase and my cloth backpack. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I'm with the Miller family." "The room for Jessica Rodriguez Miller," I said, trying to sound confident as I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. The receptionist typed something into his computer, frowned, and typed again. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not listed in any of the reserved rooms. Are you sure you have a reservation?" It felt like a slap in the face. The air conditioning now seemed too cold. "Yes, of course. My daughter invited me. Jessica Rodriguez Miller. She's celebrating her anniversary with her husband, Greg." The young man searched again, this time more carefully. "Ah, yes, here it is. Room 1201. But the system only shows 2 adults and 2 minors registered. You are not included in the reservation, ma'am." The words hit me like hammer blows. I felt my legs tremble. The people in the lobby went on with their normal lives, but I was just standing there, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. Could you call the room? Maybe there was a mistake." The receptionist, who now looked at me with a mixture of pity and discomfort, dialed the internal number. We waited. Once, twice, 3 times. "They're not answering, ma'am. Would you like me to try again later?" I pulled out my old flip phone with shaky hands. I dialed Jessica's number. It rang 5 times before she answered. "Mom? What's wrong?" "Honey, I'm at the front desk, and they say I don't have a reservation. Can you come down?" There was a long silence. Too long. "Oh, Mom, I forgot to mention. Greg didn't want to pay for an extra rollaway bed. The rooms are only for 4 people. But you can leave your things here in the room and then see if you can find a motel nearby to sleep. It shouldn't be too expensive." The phone almost fell from my hands. Around the lobby, life went on as normal. A young couple was kissing by the fountain. Some children were asking their parents for ice cream. A group of friends laughed as they took photos. "Are you telling me to sleep somewhere else, Jessica?" "Well, Mom, it's not a big deal. It's only for 2 nights. Besides, this way you'll have your privacy. We can have breakfast together tomorrow if you want." "If I want?" I repeated, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Yes, Mom. We'll talk tomorrow. I'm bathing the kids right now. Then we have dinner. And you know how they get when they stay up too late." And she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like the most foolish woman in New York. The receptionist looked at me with pity, waiting for me to do something, to make a decision, to stop blocking his desk. "Do you need help finding lodging in the area, ma'am? There are a few motels a couple of blocks from here." I nodded without speaking. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I was going to cry right there, in front of all those happy families, in front of that young man who had already seen enough drama for one day. I left the hotel dragging my suitcase, with the same oppressive heat making my blouse stick to my back. I walked through the streets like a zombie, looking for signs that said motel or inn. My feet ached in my work shoes, the only comfortable ones I had for walking. I found a place called the Sunrise Motel, 3 blocks down. The facade needed a coat of paint, but the sign said, "Clean rooms, affordable rates." It was what I could afford. The woman who helped me was my age, maybe a little older. She looked at me kindly when I explained I needed a room for 2 nights. "It's $80 a night with a shared bathroom. Breakfast is an extra $10, but it's all you can eat," she said, as she gave me the key to room 7. $160. More than I spent on groceries in a week. But I had no choice. The room was small, but clean. A single bed with a faded floral bedspread, an old wooden wardrobe, and a window that looked out onto an inner courtyard where other guests' laundry was drying. The bathroom was at the end of the hall, and I shared it with 3 other rooms. I sat on the bed, and finally allowed myself to cry. I cried for the humiliation at the hotel, for my daughter's coldness, for being so foolish as to believe I was finally being included in something. I took the photo albums out of my backpack. I laid them on the bed and opened them. There was Jessica at 5 years old, riding on my shoulders in Prospect Park. Jessica at 8, blowing out her birthday candles in our small kitchen, smiling because I had bought her the pink bicycle she wanted so badly. Jessica at 16, hugging me on her high school graduation day, crying with happiness because she had gotten a scholarship to study business. Where had that girl gone? The one who told me I was her hero. When had she become this cold woman who treated me like a burden? I remembered all the times I sold empanadas outside the Jackson Heights subway station to pay for her college textbooks. The early mornings I got up at 4 to clean offices and get home in time to make her breakfast before she left for class. The Sundays I went without eating so she could go to the movies with her friends. When she met Greg, I thought she would finally have the stability she deserved. He worked at a bank, had a good salary, and seemed to truly love her. At the wedding, Jessica had whispered in my ear, "Thanks for everything, Mom. None of this would have been possible without you." But something changed after that. The visits became less frequent. The calls grew shorter. When the children were born, I offered to watch them while she worked, but Greg said they preferred a professional daycare. When Leo had pneumonia and was hospitalized for a week, I slept at the hospital every night, but Jessica asked me to leave because the doctor says too many visitors aren't good for the child. I got up from the bed and went to the window. In the courtyard, an elderly woman was hanging sheets in the sun. Her movements were slow but steady, like mine when I clean offices. I wondered if she also had children who treated her the way I was treated. If she had also spent her life giving everything without receiving even the crumbs of respect she deserved. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "We're going to the hotel pool early tomorrow. The kids are excited. If you want, you can come around 12 when it's not so crowded. We'll wait for you for lunch. If you want." As if they were doing me a favor. As if I were a distant acquaintance invited out of obligation. I put the phone away without replying. I opened my suitcase and took out my pajamas, the blue cotton ones I'd bought at a street fair because it was all I could afford. I changed in front of the wardrobe mirror, and for the first time in years, I truly saw myself, a 57-year-old woman with rough hands, gray hair, and lines of exhaustion around her eyes. A woman who had given everything and received crumbs. A woman who had raised a daughter to treat her as if she were invisible. That night, lying in the strange bed, listening to the noises of the motel, I made a decision that would change everything forever. The next morning, I woke up with a sore neck and a strange feeling in my chest, as if something had broken during the night. The motel mattress sagged in the middle and I had slept poorly. But it wasn't the physical pain that made me restless. It was something deeper. A cold clarity I had never felt before. I showered in the shared bathroom with water that was barely lukewarm, got dressed in the same clothes from the day before because I hadn't packed much, and went down to the motel's small dining area. The woman who had checked me in served me coffee and toast. I ate slowly, watching people pass by on the street outside, workers heading to the subway, mothers taking their children to school, old men buying the newspaper from the corner store. Normal life, people who had a place in the world. At 11:30, I walked back to the hotel. This time, I wasn't carrying any luggage, just my handbag and the bag with the gifts for the kids. The same receptionist from yesterday recognized me and gave me an awkward smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Is everything all right?" "Yes, thank you. I'm here to see my family." I took the elevator to the 12th floor. The hallway had a thick carpet and smelled of expensive air freshener. I knocked on the door of room 1201. Greg opened it, wearing swim trunks with a towel around his neck. "Oh, hi, Alice. Come in, come in. We're just getting ready to head down to the pool." I entered the room. It was huge. 2 queen-sized beds, a sofa, a coffee table with fresh fruit, and a terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. I could hear Jessica's hairdryer in the bathroom. Leo and Sophie were on one of the beds, watching cartoons on a flat-screen TV. "Hi, Grandma," Leo shouted without taking his eyes off the screen. Sophie glanced at me for a second and went back to the cartoons. "Kids, look what Grandma brought you," I said. taking the Oreos and bubble gum out of my bag. "Mom, don't give them sweets before lunch," Jessica called from the bathroom. "You know Leo has issues with sugar." I put the cookies away without a word. I sat on the sofa, feeling like an awkward guest instead of the grandmother who had come to spend time with her family. Greg put on a white shirt and sat next to me. "How was the motel?" he asked, but his tone was more out of politeness than genuine interest. "Fine. It was fine," I lied. "Perfect. You know how these hotels are. The family rooms are very specific about the number of guests. If I had known earlier you wanted to come, maybe we could have done something different. If I had known earlier. As if it were my fault for not giving notice that I wanted to be with my family." Jessica came out of the bathroom wearing a black bikini and an elegant cover-up. She looked beautiful, relaxed, as if nothing had happened yesterday. "Oh, Mom, so glad you could make it. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, honey," I replied. Because what else could I say? "Perfect. Let's head down then. The kids are desperate to get in the water." We all went down together. In the elevator, Leo asked me, "Grandma, are you going to get in the pool too?" "I didn't bring a swimsuit, sweetie." "Why didn't you bring one?" he asked with the kind of innocence only children have, which allows them to ask the most painful questions. "Because I forgot." Jessica and Greg exchanged a look. She knelt beside Leo. "Honey, Grandma just came to visit for a little while. She's not going to stay very long." A little while. As if I were the nosy neighbor. Not her mother. We arrived at the pool area. It was spectacular. Crystal clear water, cushioned lounge chairs, tables with umbrellas, a bar serving cocktails with little paper umbrellas. There were families everywhere, children playing in the water, parents sunbathing while reading magazines. Greg and Jessica settled into 2 lounge chairs together. They laid out their towels, took out their tanning lotions, and ordered piña coladas from the waiter. I just stood there next to them, not knowing where to sit. "Mom, you can use that plastic chair over there," Jessica said, pointing to an ordinary white chair that was set apart from the elegant loungers. I sat in the uncomfortable chair, watching my grandchildren have fun in the water. Leo swam like a little fish, while Sophie splashed in the shallow end with pink water wings. Every now and then they would shout to me, "Grandma, look!" and do some trick in the water. I would clap and smile at them, but something was off. Every time the kids got close to talk to me, Jessica or Greg would call them over for something, asking if they were thirsty, if they needed more sunscreen, if it was time to rest a bit, as if they didn't want them spending too much time with me. At lunchtime, we went to the hotel restaurant. They sat us at a table for 6, but there were only 5 of us. The empty chair was next to me, like a reminder of what was missing. "What can I get for you all?" the waiter asked. Greg ordered the garlic shrimp. Jessica, a salmon salad. The kids, chicken nuggets and fries. "And for the lady?" the waiter asked, looking at me. I looked at the menu. The prices made me dizzy. A plate of pasta cost what I spent on groceries for 3 days. Just a simple salad, please." "Mom, order whatever you want," Jessica said. "It's our treat." No, the salad is fine." But when the food arrived, I realized something awful. No one had included my lunch in the treat. When the waiter brought the check, Greg paid for 4 meals. Mine came on a separate bill, $18 for a lettuce and tomato salad. I took out my wallet with trembling hands. It was almost all I had left for the trip back to Queens. "Is everything all right?" the waiter asked. Yes, everything's perfect," I lied, leaving the money on the table. Jessica didn't even notice. She was busy cleaning Sophie's face with a wet wipe. After lunch, Greg announced they were going to rest in the room. "The kids need their nap, otherwise they get unbearable," he explained. "Can I come up with you?" I asked. I could read the kids a story like I used to. "Better not, Mom," Jessica said quickly. "You know how Leo is when there are too many people around. He can't relax. Too many people. I was too many people for my own grandson. But you can stay here by the pool," Greg added. "It's very quiet at this time of day." And they left. The 4 of them. They went up in the elevator, leaving me alone in the hotel lobby, as if I were a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. I sat on one of the lobby sofas, watching the families come and go. Young couples with small children, grandparents carrying their grandkids in their arms, entire families hugging and laughing while waiting for the elevator. I took out my phone and looked again at the pictures I had saved. Jessica as a little girl, hugging me after her first school play, the kids on the day they were born, so tiny in the hospital, and me crying with happiness because I was finally a grandmother. When had all this started? When had I become the awkward grandmother, the mother who was a nuisance, the woman who was out of place in her own family? I remembered Leo's last birthday, 4 months ago. I had saved for weeks to buy him a small second-hand bicycle that was in good condition. When I arrived at the party, he already had 3 new bikes. One from Greg, another from Greg's parents, and another from Jessica's work friends. "Another bike?" Jessica had said when she saw my gift. "Leo, thank Grandma, but we're going to save this one for later." They put it in the garage. He never used it, or when Sophie got chickenpox last year. I offered to take care of her while Jessica worked. "No need, Mom. Greg can work from home this week, but I have experience with sick children. I took care of you when you had chickenpox." "I know, Mom, but things are done differently now." Differently. Everything was different now. Sitting on that hotel sofa, watching happy families who treated each other with affection, I understood something I had been denying for years. I wasn't part of Jessica's family. I was an obligation, a burden, someone they tolerated out of politeness, but whom they didn't really want around. And the most painful part of it all was that I had allowed this to happen. I had accepted the crumbs. I had pretended it was normal. I had swallowed one humiliation after another, hoping that one day things would get better. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "Mom, the kids are tired. I think we're just going to have dinner in the room and go to bed early. We'll see you tomorrow before we leave. Have a good rest." They hadn't even told me they were planning to leave the next day. I got up from the sofa and left the hotel. I walked aimlessly through the streets, passing clothing stores I couldn't afford, restaurants where I had never eaten, parks where I had never taken my grandchildren. By the time I got to the motel, it was already dark. The woman at the reception desk greeted me kindly. "How was the day with the family?" "Good," I lied again. "Very good." In my small room, I sat on the bed and made a decision I had been postponing for years. I took out my old address book and looked for a phone number I had saved a long time ago. The number of Claire Valdez, my childhood friend, who was now a lawyer. It was time to do something I never thought I would do. It was time to remember who Alice Rodriguez was before she became the Invisible Mother. On Monday morning, as I rode the bus back to Queens, with my red suitcase on my lap and my heart still aching from the weekend, I dialed Claire Valdez's number. It had been 3 years since we had last spoken, when Mrs. Carmen, our lifelong neighborhood friend, passed away. "Alice?" Her voice sounded surprised but warm. "So good to hear from you. How are you?" "Hi, Claire. I need to ask you a favor. Can I see you at your office this week? It's important." "Of course. Is everything all right? You sound strange." "I'll tell you when I see you." We scheduled a meeting for Wednesday at 5 in the afternoon. Those 2 days felt like an eternity. I went back to my routine of cleaning offices from 5 in the morning, but everything seemed different. It was as if I was watching my life from the outside, wondering how I had gotten to this point. On Wednesday, I arrived at Claire's office building in Manhattan. It was an elegant building near Central Park, with a uniformed doorman and mirrored elevators. When I saw the golden plaque that read, "Claire Valdez, Attorney at Law," I felt a mix of pride and envy. Pride because my childhood friend had come so far. Envy because I was still cleaning the offices of people like her. Claire greeted me with a long hug. She was still the same petite woman, but now she wore a gray pantsuit that gave her an air of authority, her hair perfectly styled in an elegant bun, and designer glasses that made her look very professional. "Please sit down. Would you like some coffee? Water?" "Just water, thank you." Her office had large windows, shelves filled with law books, and framed diplomas on the walls. I sat in a leather chair across from her dark wood desk, feeling small in my black work pants and polyester blouse. "Tell me what's wrong, Alice. You seem worried." And I told her everything. The hotel weekend, the humiliation, the years of being treated as invisible. the pain of seeing my own grandchildren view me as a nuisance. Claire listened without interrupting, taking notes from time to time. When I finished, she was silent for a few seconds. Alice, what you're telling me is very painful. But tell me, why did you come to see me? What do you want me to do? I took a deep breath. I want to review some papers. For the house where Jessica lives. Claire frowned. The papers for the house? Why? Because that house is mine, Claire. It's in my name. The silence that followed was so deep I could hear the traffic from the street 12 floors below. What do you mean it's yours? I thought it belonged to Greg and Jessica. No. I bought it with the inheritance from my mother 8 years ago. The $250,000 she left me when she died. At the time, Jessica was newly married. They were living in a small apartment, and Greg was having problems at the bank where he worked. They didn't know if he was going to be laid off. Claire leaned forward, her professional attention now fully activated. Go on. Jessica cried so much. She told me she had always dreamed of owning her own house, that the children she was going to have deserved a yard, a big room, a safe neighborhood. She told me that if I helped them with the down payment, they would take care of the monthly mortgage payments. And you paid for the whole house? The whole thing. There was no mortgage, Claire. $250,000 was enough to buy a 3-bedroom house on Long Island. Small, but nice. With a backyard and a garage. Is the deed in your name? Yes. I was the one who signed at the closing. Greg and Jessica were there as witnesses, but the legal owner is me. Alice Rodriguez. Claire looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Alice, are you telling me that your daughter and son-in-law have been living for 8 years in a house that is yours, without paying anything? Well, they pay the utilities, electricity, water, gas, property taxes. And I thought that was fair because they take care of it, they maintain it well. But you never charged them rent. No. They're my family, Claire. I wasn't going to charge them to live in a house I bought so they could be happy. And do they know the house is in your name? Of course. They were there when I signed. Jessica even cried with emotion and told me that one day she would pay me back every dollar I had invested in her happiness. Claire got up from her chair and walked to the window. She stood there for a few minutes, looking down at the street. Alice, can I ask you something very personal? Of course. Where do you live now? The question hit me because it was true. Since Antonio died 6 years ago, I had been living in a tiny studio in Queens that cost me $900 a month. A single room with a bed, a kitchenette the size of a closet, and a bathroom so small I couldn't stretch out my arms. I have a studio in Jackson Heights. What is the house on Long Island valued at now? I don't know. I haven't checked. Well, I have an idea. That area has appreciated a lot in recent years. A house like the one you're describing must be worth around $600,000, maybe more. The number made me dizzy. $600,000. More money than I had ever seen in my entire life. Alice, can you bring me all the papers for the house tomorrow? The deed, tax receipts, everything you have. What for? Because I think it's time for you to make a decision about your property. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in my small bed, in my small studio, thinking about the house on Long Island where my daughter was raising her children, in the yard I had paid for, in the spacious rooms I had bought, in the garage where they parked Greg's BMW that cost more than everything I owned. The next day, I returned to Claire's office with a worn-out blue folder where I kept all the important documents of my life: the deed to the house, the tax receipts I paid religiously every year, the insurance policies, everything. Claire reviewed each paper with professional care. Everything is in order, Alice. The house is yours without a doubt. Do you know what this means? That I own a house I can't live in? No. It means you have options. You can sell the house and buy yourself something better to live in. You can ask them to pay you rent to live there. You can move into the house yourself. It's your legal right. Or you can continue as you are, being the invisible owner of a property that brings you pain instead of joy. Claire, I can't kick my grandchildren out of their home. It's not their home, Alice. It's your home. And they can find another place to live like all normal families do. But where will they live? Greg has a good job, but not enough to buy a house like that. That's not your problem. You already solved their housing problem 8 years ago. What have they done for you since then? The question hung in the air like a soft but firm slap. What had they done for me? Shut me out of the hotel, made me pay for my own meal, kept the children away from me, treated me like a stranger at family gatherings. Do you know what hurts the most, Claire? Tell me that when I bought that house, I thought I was securing my place in the family. I thought that if I gave them something so big, so important, they would never leave me alone. I thought I would always have a place to go, that I would always be welcome. And what did you get? I got them to feel entitled to treat me badly, as if the favor had already been paid back, as if they no longer owed me anything. Claire sat on the edge of her desk, looking at me with the seriousness of a friend who is about to say something difficult, but necessary. Alice, do you want to keep living like this? No. Do you want to keep being the awkward grandmother, the mother who is a burden, the invisible woman in her own family? No. Then you have to make a decision, and you have to make it now, because with every day that passes, you become smaller in their eyes, and smaller in your own. That night, sitting in my tiny studio with the house papers spread out on my bed, I called Jessica. Hi, Mom. What's up? Her voice sounded distracted, as always. Honey, I need to talk to you. Can you come to my place tomorrow? Your place? Oh, Mom, I have a million things to do tomorrow. Can't it be over the phone? No, I need to see you in person. Did something happen? You sound strange. Tomorrow at 6 in the evening, we have important things to discuss. And for the first time in years, I hung up first. Jessica arrived 20 minutes late, as always. She knocked on my studio door with those impatient little taps I knew so well, as if the time spent with me was time wasted from her important life. I opened the door and saw her standing there with her designer bag slung over her shoulder, looking at her phone as she greeted me. Hi, Mom. What's so urgent? I have to pick up the kids from soccer at 7:30. She was always in a hurry. Always had something more important to do. Come in, sit down. My studio looked even smaller with her in it. Jessica looked around with that expression she got when visiting places she found depressing. She sat in the only chair I had, crossed her legs, and continued to check her phone. Want some water? Coffee? No, thanks. Just tell me what's wrong so I'm not late for the kids. I sat on the bed facing her. Between us was the small table where I had placed the blue folder with all the documents. Jessica, I need to talk to you about the house. This, for the first time since she arrived, she looked up from her phone. Which house? Your house. The one on Long Island. What's wrong with my house? Her voice changed, becoming defensive. The thing is, it's not your house, honey. It's mine. Jessica froze completely. The phone was still in her hand, but she was no longer looking at it. What are you talking about, Mom? The house deed is in my name. I bought it with the inheritance money from your grandmother. Don't you remember? Yes, but that was 8 years ago. We've been paying all the expenses, maintaining it, improving it. The utility expenses, yes. But you've never paid me rent. And the improvements you made were for your comfort, not mine. Jessica shot up from the chair as if on springs. Mom, are you threatening me? I'm not threatening you. I'm reminding you of the legal reality. The legal reality? Her voice went up an octave. Mom, are you hearing yourself? We're family. We don't talk about legal reality in a family. You're right. It shouldn't be necessary in a family. But it turns out that last weekend I discovered that to you, I'm not family. What are you talking about? Of course you're family. Really? Because you invited me to a hotel where I didn't have a room. You left me to carry my own bags. You made me pay for my own food. And you kept me from spending time with my grandchildren as if I were a dangerous stranger. Jessica ran her hands through her hair, nervous. Oh, Mom, I already told you that was a misunderstanding. The hotel rooms are very specific about the number of people. And why didn't you tell me that before? Why did you invite me if you knew there was no room for me? Because I thought you wouldn't mind sleeping somewhere else. You've always been so adaptable. Adaptable. I repeated the word as if it were poison. Yes, I've been very adaptable. I've adapted to not being invited to birthdays until the last minute. I've adapted to being treated like the second-class grandmother. I've adapted to being invisible in my own family. Mom, don't exaggerate. You're not invisible. Am I not? Tell me the last time you asked me how I am. Not, hi, Mom, how are you? But really ask me how I feel. if I need anything, if my health is okay, if I'm lonely, if I'm having trouble. Jessica opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. You can't, can you? Because to you, I'm the automatic mom, the one who's always available when you need me, the one who never complains, the one who accepts the crumbs of attention you give me when you have time to spare. That's not true. Jessica, last week I sent you 3 text messages, one on Monday, another on Wednesday, another on Friday. Normal messages, asking about the kids, telling you I saw a movie you might like. Do you know when you answered me? Jessica remained silent. Saturday night. A single message. Everything's fine, Mom. Talk soon. And the only thing I got was an invitation to that hotel to be humiliated. It wasn't my intention to humiliate you. No? Then tell me what it was. Affection? Including me in the family? Making me feel loved? Jessica sat down again, but now she looked smaller, less confident. Mom, Things have been complicated. Greg is under a lot of stress at work. The kids have so many activities. The house always needs something. The house that I bought. Yes, but we live in it. We take care of it. You take care of it? Is taking care of it never inviting the owner over? Is taking care of it making me feel like a stranger every time I visit? You can come whenever you want, Mom. Really? The last time I came without calling, Greg opened the door in his boxers and told me you were busy watching a family movie. I stood in the yard that I paid for, watching through the window as my family watched a movie without me. Jessica put her hands over her face. I didn't know you felt that way. How could you not know? How could a mother not feel bad when she's treated like she's disposable? Mom, maybe we can organize things differently. Differently how? Are you going to start treating me with respect? Are you going to let me be a real grandmother, not just the grandmother for your spare time? Are you going to include me in the family decisions that are made in the house that I bought? Jessica lifted her head and looked at me with something resembling fear. What exactly are you asking for, Mom? I'm asking you to choose. Either you start treating me like the mother and grandmother I am, with real respect and affection, or I sell the house and we each go our own way. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sell the house? Mom? Are you crazy? Where would we live? I don't know. Where all the families who don't have a mother to gift them a house live. But Mom, the kids grew up there. It's their home. They have their friends in the neighborhood. Their school is nearby. And it was my money. The money my mother left me so I could have a dignified old age. Money I invested in my family's happiness, believing that it would secure me a place in that family. Of course you have a place. What place, Jessica? The place of the woman who is useful when needed and disappears when she's in the way? Jessica got up and started pacing in the small space of my studio. You can't be thinking of selling the house over a misunderstanding at a hotel. It's not about the hotel, honey. The hotel was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It's about years of feeling like a stranger in my own grandchildren's lives. It's about years of being the last to know about everything. It's about years of accepting the leftovers of your time and affection. Mom, if there are problems, we can solve them by talking. We've been talking for 8 years, Jessica. Me talking, and you half listening. Me asking for crumbs of attention, and you giving them to me when you had nothing better to do. Jessica sat down again and looked at me with shiny eyes. What do you want me to do? I want you to respect me. I want you to include me. I want to be the grandmother who goes to the school plays, who helps with homework, who takes care of them when they're sick. I want to be the mother you call when you have problems, not just when you need a babysitter. We can fix that, can we? Or are you going to keep making excuses like always? Greg prefers you don't come on Sundays because it's his only day off. The kids are going through a difficult phase, so maybe we'll see you another day. We have family plans and we don't want to make things awkward with too many people. Each phrase I repeated made her shrink a little more in the chair. I never said that. You said it all, Jessica. One excuse after another for years. And I accepted all of them because I was afraid of losing you completely. You're not going to lose me, Mom. I already lost you, honey. I lost you years ago, when you decided that being my daughter was a burden instead of a gift. Jessica started to cry, but they were tears of panic, not remorse. Mom, you can't do this to us. Greg is going to go crazy. The kids won't understand. The kids will understand that their grandmother no longer accepts being treated as if she were invisible. What if we promised to change? Like you promised we would have breakfast together at the hotel? Like you promised you would pay me back for the house when you could? Like you promised I would always have a place in your family? Jessica stood up again, now crying for real. Give me a chance, Mom. A real chance. I've given you 8 years of chances, Jessica. 8 years waiting for you to treat me as I deserve. What do I have to do? You have to decide if you want me in your life for real, or if you only want me when it's convenient for you. Because if it's the latter, I'd rather be alone with my dignity than accompanied out of pity. Jessica walked to the door, but before leaving she turned around. How much time do I have to decide? As much time as you think a mother who gave you everything deserves. When she left, I remained seated on my bed, trembling. Not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The next day, I woke up with my eyes swollen from crying, but with a strange firmness in my chest. I had spent the night replaying every word from Jessica, every excuse, every look of contempt disguised as indifference. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel like a victim, but like the owner of something I had forgotten. My life and my decisions. I went to work as usual. At 5 a.m, I was in the office building with my bucket and mop, cleaning hallways that would never stop being someone else's. As I scrubbed the floor, I realized I had been doing the exact same thing for years. Upholding other people's lives without anyone noticing I existed. But now, something had changed. I would no longer allow that invisibility to define the rest of my days. Mid-morning, I received a text from Claire. I have a contact at a reputable real estate agency. If you want, I can put you in touch for an appraisal of the house. You don't have to decide anything yet. Just hear what it's worth today. Reading it, my heart raced. Seeing it in real, tangible numbers meant facing the truth that this house, more than a symbol of sacrifice, could be my salvation. I replied with a simple, "Yes, thank you," and put the phone in my pocket, trembling. That afternoon, I met with Claire and a young real estate agent named Sergio. We met at a coffee shop near the park. The young man, no more than 30, opened his laptop and showed me photos of similar houses on Long Island, all sold in the last 6 months. Each one was between $540,000 and $570,000. Your property, Mrs. Rodriguez, could even reach $600,000 if it's well maintained. It's a very sought-after area. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $600,000. With that, I could buy a comfortable apartment in the city, stop cleaning offices, and even live with some peace of mind for the years I had left. I wouldn't have to stretch every dollar of my Social Security, or go without medication, or depend on my daughter remembering I existed. Are you sure you want to sell? Sergio asked me kindly, but also with a glint of professional interest in his eyes. I looked at him without answering. Claire intervened. Alice is just exploring her options. The decision hasn't been made yet. I nodded, but inside the scales were already tipping. I wouldn't say it out loud yet, but I felt it. For the first time, I was thinking about myself and not about everyone else. That night, while eating a cup of instant soup in my studio, I received an unexpected call. It was Greg. Alice, good evening. Sorry to bother you at this hour. Jessica has been very upset since she spoke with you. Can we meet tomorrow to clear everything up? His tone was diplomatic, like a banker used to negotiating. It wasn't a request. It was almost an order disguised as courtesy. We can meet, but in a neutral place. Not at the house. All right. You name it. We agreed on a coffee shop near Grand Central. The next day, I arrived before him, my blue folder by my side. Greg walked in with his impeccable suit, leather briefcase, and that professional smile that never inspired my trust. Alice, he began as he ordered an Americano, I understand you're hurt. Jessica told me about the hotel, and I'm very sorry it turned out that way. But to go from that to talking about selling the house, well, I think that's a bit extreme, don't you? I listened in silence. Look, I acknowledge that the deed is in your name, but the reality is that house is our home. Our children have grown up there. You yourself gave it to us for that purpose. Do you really want to take it from them? I didn't give it, Greg. I bought it, and I never stopped being the owner. He smiled with a calculated gesture. Legally, yes. But morally, everyone in the family knows that house is ours. What will the children think if one day we tell them that Grandma kicked them out of their home? His sentence was a dagger disguised as an argument. And what will they think if one day they discover that their mother and father treated their grandmother as if she were invisible? I responded, with a calmness that left him speechless. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Alice, we don't want to resort to legal conflicts. We can fix this within the family. Then treat me like family, not like a liability. Greg was silent for a few seconds, then leaned toward me. Tell us what you want. A monthly payment? For you to move in with us? We can find a reasonable solution. What I want is respect. And if you don't have that, then I want my house. His eyes hardened. That friendly facade cracked for an instant. Jessica won't be able to handle this, Alice. If you insist, the relationship will never be the same. The relationship no longer exists, Greg. What exists is a stage set where I play the part of the awkward grandmother. He stood up abruptly. Think it over. If you sell that house, you're not just hurting us. You're hurting yourself too. You'll lose your daughter and your grandchildren forever. I watched him walk away quickly, like someone who had just lost control of a negotiation. I stayed there, staring at my cold coffee, knowing that his threat was, in reality, a confirmation. They didn't love me for who I was, but for what I represented. The following days were a whirlwind. Jessica called me several times, crying, begging me to reconsider. At times, she sounded like the little girl she once was, pleading with a trembling voice. At other times, she became a cold, accusatory stranger, telling me I was destroying her. I listened, my heart in pieces, but with an ever firmer clarity. I remembered the nights I spent in the hospital with Leo, the times I went hungry to pay for her school uniforms, the endless early mornings scrubbing floors so she would never lack for anything. And I thought, all that for what? To be treated like an old piece of furniture? Claire accompanied me to the notary's office the following Friday. I signed the initial documents to put the house up for sale. It wasn't easy. My hands trembled. I felt like I was betraying something sacred. But I also felt like I was breaking chains. That same weekend, I received an email from the real estate agency with 3 offers, all over $550,000. One of them was a cash offer. I cried. I cried from fear, from pain, from relief. Not for losing the house, but because I was finally choosing myself. The news spread quickly. Jessica came to see me, furious. She banged on my door so hard I thought she would break it down. Mom, you can't do this. That house is our life. I looked her in the eyes and, for the first time, I didn't look away. That house was my life, Jessica. But now I want to have one of my own. She cried. She screamed. She insulted me. I let her vent, because I knew it was the beginning of her grieving process. I was grieving too, but for something much bigger. For the daughter I had lost years ago. The one who never came back. When she left, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The decision was made. The invisible grandmother was gone. In her place, a new woman was being born. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and silence. I woke up every morning to go to work, as always. But inside me, something had been set free. I no longer felt the same resignation as before. That weight of being condemned to clean offices to support a life that didn't belong to me. Now, every rag I wrung out, every floor that shone under my mop, reminded me that soon I wouldn't have to keep doing it if I didn't want to. Jessica's calls became insistent. One day it was pleading, the next it was reproach, then insults disguised as tears. She told me I was cruel, that I was destroying her children, that they would never forgive me. I listened in silence, letting her voice wear itself out on the other end of the line. When she hung up, the silence of my studio enveloped me like a balm. And for the first time, that silence didn't frighten me. It was freedom. Claire called me on a Tuesday. We have a firm offer, Alice. $560,000, all cash, with immediate closing. A shiver ran down my spine. It was real. I could sell the house and with that money, start over. I asked her for a few days. I needed to process it. That night, I sat on my bed with the deed papers in front of me. I went over them again and again. remembering the day I signed them. I remembered how Jessica cried with emotion, how she hugged me, saying she would never forget what I did for her. And now, years later, those tears had turned into reproaches, into contempt, into abandonment. On Thursday, I decided to go to Long Island one last time before giving my final answer. I walked to the subway station, then took the train. The whole way, my heart pounded. I knew this trip would be a turning point. When I arrived in the neighborhood, I recognized everything. The tree-lined streets, the parks full of children, the luxury shops I could never enter. I walked to the house. My house. I found it impeccable, with the lawn perfectly mowed and the flowers I had planted myself at the beginning still blooming, though no one else remembered. I stopped in front of the gate, looking through the bars. Sophie was playing on the grass with a doll, and Leo was throwing a ball against the wall. For a moment, I felt a lump in my throat. They weren't to blame for any of this. They were just children, accustomed to the version of the story their parents told them. The garage door opened and Greg drove out in the BMW. He saw me standing there. He slammed on the brakes and rolled down the window. "Alice, what are you doing here?" His tone was sharp, with no trace of courtesy. "I wanted to see the house one last time. You can't just show up like this, it confuses the kids. The kids need to know their grandmother exists. Don't bring the kids into this. They're fine." I stared at him. They're not fine if they grow up believing it's okay to despise someone who loves them. Greg scoffed, revved the engine, and drove off without another word. I stayed there, watching my grandchildren for another minute, until Jessica came to the door. When she saw me, her face hardened. "Here again, Mom? Don't you understand you're destroying everything? I'm taking back what's mine, Jessica. At what cost? My children's? Their stability? At the cost of my dignity, honey. The dignity you both took from me years ago." Jessica yelled more things at me, but I didn't listen anymore. I turned and walked back to the train station, tears rolling down my cheeks, but with the certainty that there was no turning back. On Friday, I signed the sale papers. I did it with trembling hands, but with peace in my heart. Claire was with me the whole time. When I finished signing my name, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Alice, you just got your life back." That afternoon, the money was deposited into an account in my name. Seeing so many zeros together made me dizzy. I, who had counted coins to pay for the bus, now held a new future in my hands. With Claire's help, I started looking for a small but comfortable apartment in the city. We found one in the East Village, 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking the street, an elevator, and most importantly, natural light. I walked in to see it, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: home. Meanwhile, Jessica's calls became less frequent, but more desperate. One day she left me a crying voicemail. "Mom, how could you? The kids won't stop asking questions. They say their grandma abandoned them." I cried when I heard it, but I also wondered, who abandoned whom first? Me? Who was always there, or her? Who slowly erased me from her life? The days passed, and I moved into my new apartment. I decorated with the little I had: a couple of photos, the old albums, the rag doll I had made for Sophie. I bought a small table, 2 chairs, a comfortable bed. I didn't need more. The important thing was that it was mine. One Saturday, while I was sweeping the balcony, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Leo and Sophie standing there with small backpacks. Behind them was Jessica, her face weary. "Mom," she said in a low voice, "the kids want to stay with you this weekend." I looked at them, surprised. Leo hugged me immediately. Sophie took my hand. Jessica looked down, as if ashamed. "I can't promise anything, Mom. Greg is furious, but I don't want to lose you either." I didn't answer with words. I just opened the door wide and let my grandchildren in. The apartment filled with laughter, with games, with life. That night, we had Oreos and milk for dinner, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that life could still give me gifts. I went to bed late, after tucking them into my bed while I slept on the sofa. I lay there staring at the ceiling, silent tears streaming down my face. I didn't know what would happen next, if Jessica would really change or if she would pull away again. But that night I understood something fundamental. I no longer depended on them to feel alive. For the first time in decades, I chose myself, and that was the beginning of everything. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee that Leo was trying to make in my small kitchen. The sound of the microwave heating milk and Sophie's laughter as she stirred in sugar made me feel a happiness so simple, so pure, it almost made my chest ache. For years, I had dreamed of a moment like this, having my grandchildren under my roof, hearing their voices without anyone rushing them, without anyone pushing me away. "Grandma, your house is more fun than ours," Sophie told me in her sweet little voice as we ate cookies for breakfast. "Really? But there's no yard or new toys here." "Yeah, but you listen to us here." The girl said it with a naturalness that pierced my soul. I looked at them and felt that all the sacrifice, all the pain, all the tears had a purpose. I didn't know how long it would last, but that moment was mine, and no one could take it away from me. At noon, Jessica came back to pick them up. Her eyes were red, as if she hadn't slept. "Thanks, Mom," she said quietly. The kids were so happy. I nodded, without reproach. There was no need. The contrast between the coldness of the last few years and the warmth of that weekend spoke for itself. Weeks went by, and slowly the children began to visit more often. Sometimes they came for just a few hours. Other times they stayed the night. Each visit was a mix of joy and pain. Joy because I could finally be a real grandmother. Pain because I knew these visits were only half tolerated by Greg. One day, while we were playing Sorry, at the dining table, Leo asked me, "Grandma, why does Mom always cry when she talks to you?" I swallowed hard. I didn't want to poison them with my wounds, but I couldn't lie to them completely either. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and it's hard for us to say we're sorry. Sophie looked at me with those huge, sincere eyes. "Did you forgive her?" I was quiet for a moment. Then I gave a sad smile. "Always. Because even when it hurts, she's still my daughter." That night, after I dropped them off on Long Island, Jessica called me, crying. "Mom, I don't know what to do. Greg is pressuring me all the time. He says I was wrong to let you see the kids, that you're manipulating them now. And what do you think, Jessica?" I just know that when they come back from your place, they smile like they used to, and I had forgotten what that looked like. Her confession was like a ray of light. For the first time in years, I felt that something in her was beginning to crack, that the cold woman who had built a wall between us was showing fissures. But the real turning point came weeks later. I received a letter from the bank. At first, I thought it was junk mail, but when I opened it, I discovered the unthinkable. The account where the money from the sale had been deposited had generated interest. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to make me realize something. I didn't need to keep cleaning offices to survive. I spoke with Claire, and together we came up with a plan. With part of the money, I bought my new apartment. With another part, I opened a small, safe investment account. And most surprisingly, Claire introduced me to a friend of hers who was looking for someone trustworthy to manage a small community arts center in the East Village. It didn't require physical labor, just organization, people skills, and responsibility. I accepted. Suddenly, I went from being the invisible woman to being someone recognized. In the neighborhood, people started calling me Alice, the lady who always had a kind word for the young artists, the one who organized exhibits and poetry readings, the one who decorated the space with fresh flowers every week. And one Friday afternoon, while I was at the center, Jessica showed up. Not in her impeccable suit or with her haughty expression, but with a simplicity that I found almost strange. "Mom, can I talk to you?" I nodded. I led her to a table in the back, away from the bustle. "The kids ask me all the time when they can see you again. I can't keep denying them what they feel, and I don't want to either." Her eyes were full of tears. For a moment, I saw the little girl I had raised, the one who would fall asleep in my arms asking for a story. "Mom, forgive me. I treated you in a way no one deserves to be treated. I thought that as long as you had a roof and food, that was enough. I forgot you were a person, that you were my mother." Tears were streaming down my own cheeks. "I don't know if I can forget everything that happened, honey, but I can forgive." We hugged, a long, silent hug, as if we were trying to stitch the wounds of so many years together with invisible threads. Since then, our relationship hasn't been perfect, but it has been different. Jessica started visiting me alone, without excuses. The kids came every week and my apartment filled with laughter. And I, though I still worked at the center, no longer did it out of necessity, but out of passion. I became the woman who was once invisible and who now shone with her own light. The one who stopped begging for crumbs and learned to choose herself first. And I understood something that will stay with me until my last day. When a woman chooses herself, even if the whole world tries to dim her light, she will always find a way to be reborn. Because in the end, what saved me wasn't the money from the house, or my daughter's forgiveness, or even the renewed affection of my grandchildren. What saved me was the decision to say, enough. Now, it's my turn. Life taught me that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. The months passed like an unexpected breeze. Little by little, my life began to fill with a different kind of routine, one not marked by humiliation or forced silences. At the Arts Center in the East Village, I discovered something I had forgotten years ago: the pleasure of conversation without fear of being interrupted, of laughing without feeling watched, of feeling useful beyond blood ties. The young artists treated me with a respect I had never received from my own family. "Alice, you're like our guardian angel," some of them would say, leaving flowers on my desk, always with inspiring words. At first I would blush, not knowing how to react. Then I started to believe it. Yes, I was their guardian. And my own, too. I was rescuing myself. The kids came over frequently on weekends. Leo had already learned how to make coffee in my old Italian coffee maker, and Sophie would decorate my balcony with drawings she taped to the windows. Their laughter in my home became a balm, a silent medicine that healed old wounds. Jessica started staying longer. Sometimes she would sit with me in the kitchen, a warm mug of tea in her hands, and tell me about her work, her fears, her exhaustion. She was no longer the distant daughter who greeted me with excuses, but a woman who finally dared to be vulnerable. I listened without judgment, though the memory of all the past pain still burned inside me. One autumn afternoon, she confessed something I didn't expect. "Mom, Greg and we're having a crisis. He can't stand what happened with the house. He says you ruined everything, that he'll never forgive you. But I can't defend him anymore." I looked at her in silence. There was something in her voice that struck me. It wasn't anger. It was relief. "And what do you want, honey?" "I want to be close to you." She said it without hesitation, tears in her eyes. "I've realized that when the kids are with you, they're happy, and when I'm with you, I'm happy too." For the first time in many years, I felt those words weren't empty. They were true. That night, after Jessica and the kids left, I sat at my dining table, looking at the clock. For decades, I had been the one waiting, the one begging for a little time, a little attention. Now she was the one who came looking for me, the one who needed my calm. And I, far from feeling vengeful, only felt compassion. Greg, however, didn't stay quiet. He sent me a cold text message. "This is all your fault. You destroyed my family. One day the kids will know the truth." I read it several times, and I realized it didn't hurt me, because that threat no longer had any power over me. With the money I still had left, I decided to treat myself to a luxury I had never dreamed of: a trip. I had always wanted to see Italy, to walk the streets of Rome, to see the canals of Venice. I booked a tour package without telling anyone. It was my secret, my gift to myself. When Jessica found out, her eyes went wide as if she couldn't believe it. "By yourself, Mom?" "Yes, honey. It's about time I learned to travel with myself." The day I left, Leo hugged me tightly, and Sophie tucked a drawing with hearts into my suitcase that said, "So you don't forget us." I cried on the plane with the drawing in my hands. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering forever. Italy was a rebirth. I walked through streets that seemed to come from a dream. I ate gelato in lively piazzas. I listened to languages I didn't understand, but that made me feel part of something bigger. For the first time in years, I felt light, unchained. I took pictures of everything: the Trevi Fountain, the Colosseum, a gondola that took me on a ride under a Venetian sunset. And in every photo, I was smiling, not for someone else, but for me. When I returned to New York, I found a neighborhood that welcomed me back like a dear friend. At the Arts Center, they organized a small welcome party. They had hung a sign that read, "Welcome back, Alice. We missed you." They hugged me. They gave me flowers. I, who had once felt invisible even to my own daughter, was now cherished in a place where I was truly valued. Over time, Jessica made a difficult decision. She separated from Greg. It wasn't easy. She cried a lot, suffered more than she let on, but she did it. And in the midst of her pain, she came to me. "Mom, I don't know how to start over." I hugged her. "The same way I did, by choosing yourself." From then on, our visits stopped being forced and became real encounters. The kids came every weekend. Jessica and I cooked together. We laughed. We recalled old stories without resentment. The wound didn't disappear, but it scarred over. And one night, while we were all having dinner in my small apartment, Leo raised his glass of milk and said, "A toast to being a real family now." Tears rolled down my cheeks. Yes, after so many years of suffering, of invisibility, of humiliation, I had finally earned my place. Not by gifting houses, not by sacrificing my entire life, but for something deeper, because I learned to respect myself. Today, I can say with certainty, it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to reclaim your dignity. Even if you have to go through the greatest pain, I did it, and I was reborn. Life taught me that no matter how much they ignore you, how much they reject you, or how much they humiliate you, there is always a chance to rise up and shine with your own light. What about you? Have you ever felt invisible to the ones you love most? Tell me in the comments. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach those who need it most.